Hi, my name's Grigory Granovsky, or Gracia, or whatever.
G-Man.
You may know me, possibly. I study computer science. Kind of my thing. Mostly, the major reason I do computer science is because I like it. It's a really good application of a whole bunch of discrete math stuff, and that's what I'm really interested in. One of the things I'm really interested in is cryptography. It's cool, it's an application of discrete math, I like it, and it's really super applicable. So, I guess I started this talk because I wanted to talk about, I started writing this and I wanted to talk about RSA. And to talk about RSA, I had to talk about stuff that came before it. So I ended up basically talking about possibly, hopefully, brief history of cryptographic methods. Right. Okay, go back. Okay. So what is cryptography? Cryptography is basically the art and science of encrypting messages that you don't want to be seen by means of changing them in a way that is easy to decipher for the intended recipient. To put it bluntly, it's the art of and science of using mathematical methods to make codes that are impossible to read for an eavesdropper, but readable for the intended recipient. This is distinct from say in stenography, which is the art of hiding writing. You can put your message under a postcard or something. That's not cryptography. That's stenography. That's a whole different kettle of fish. So yeah, sure.
Oh, good. Okay. Don't lay off, Nick.
Okay, so let's move on. Okay, now I kind of know. Awesome. Okay, so the easiest possible method of encoding something, a cipher, is what's called the substitution symbol. I cribbed this off the internet. Hence the story. Basically, you replace, every letter of your alphabet that you're trying to encrypt with another letter, basically, possibly from your alphabet, might be just a symbol, doesn't really matter. In this case, they've replaced every letter with basically the top lines that they're positioned on the keyboard, and it's QWERTY, yes, is that. So you can see that, right? So you got G here encrypts to U, R here encrypts to K, A here encrypts to Q, and so on. And hence, Gray Fox has arrived, turned into this. And this is basically the method of encryption people used for like 2,000 years. We know Caesar wrote about this. Caesar did pretty much this. He shifted the alphabet about 3 letters. So A went to D, B went to E, C went to F, except for the Latin alphabet and not the English one. But something along these lines. So he wrote like that. That was pretty secure because in like the early ADs and late BCs, generally every time after that, this was cracked in like 700 AD. But knowledge took a long time to proliferate in the Middle Ages, so people were using this for centuries afterwards. Because number theory hadn't properly developed. However, this is really easily breakable. Shall we move on?
Loading. There we go.
Okay. So basically, this was cracked by this guy. He's a mathematician from Baghdad in the 9th century called Al-Kindi. That's him. That's the best portrait I could find. Basically, he was looking at the time the Quran, and he realized that certain Arabic letters appeared in this Quran with like very particular frequencies. I mean, to use a rough analogy, you're more likely to see an E or a T than you are to say a Z or a Q. And he figured you can use this to crack substitution systems. the most basic one. Basically, what you do is you look at the frequency of symbols in a substitution cipher in ciphertext, called the ciphertext, and you compare that to the frequency of letters in your alphabet. And if your message is long enough, you're actually going to get a really, really, really close correlation. Even if it isn't, even if, say, it's not, like, can you put? Right. Go back. Okay, like, this is the frequency of letters in English. So if, say, your ciphertext has frequency something like, for some symbol, call that squiggle, 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 so on and so forth. You can actually sort of work out what these letters are by comparing them. So, this squiggle is likely to be E, because if your message is long enough, it's actually going to approach the same frequency as the frequency of the letter A. Even if it isn't, if you've got a bunch of letters that keep on cropping up in your ciphertext, then you're most likely that it's going to be one of these. Then you can start playing around, right? You start looking for these things. Is this? I've got these two letters that keep on occurring with alarming frequency. They're letters that probably go together. These letters, or this letter only crops up if this particular letter is coming after it. That's probably a Q, and the second letter is a U, right? In the English language, right, you can't have a Q that's not followed by a U. If the only time that this letter is used is followed by the same symbol every single time, you're like very, very sure that it's a Q. So this is basically the essence of cracking any code. You're looking for sort of familiar corners you can get your hands around and work out what the shape of the message is. In this case, you're using the frequency of where the letters come up. There's also stuff like if you see three letters coming up together really, really frequently.
Probably the.
Yeah, it's probably the, or the other three-letter words in the English language that come up like if you kind of have a very rough idea of the context, it might be hands. I mean, as a general idea, you can approach this with the assumption you don't know anything about the context because you don't want to share it. So that's the whole idea. You look for things that are really familiar. So this was cracked in about 800, 900 AD by Al-Kindi. Substitution ciphers were generally proliferated really frequently across Europe, right up until about the 16th century, when people realized they were very easily broken. You ever heard of Mary Queen of Scots? Anyway, one of the reasons she was basically the way Mary Queen of Scots was executed, basically because she was plotting against Elizabeth I. The way Elizabeth I knew this is because she intercepted messages that were being sent to Mary Queen of Scots. And they were encrypted with substitution ciphers, and Elizabeth I had this guy on her staff called Dr. D. He's kind of famous. He was like kind of a alchemist and supposed wizard. Mostly he was also a mathematician, and he cracked these ciphers using substitution analysis and as a result Mary Queen of Scots was executed. Anyway, so after these fell out of use, you started to see a whole bunch of really weird codes. One of the ones that's really interesting and important for much later events is called the Vigenère cipher. Let's go. Basically, you've got this table. This is really messy. And you've got a keyword. So say I want my keyword to be pants. And say I've got a message, I like pie. Oh, it's too long. I'll just repeat pants again. And you cross it off. Basically, you've got your keyword, you've got your message you want to encrypt. You find the column here that starts with the first letter of the keyword. You find where it intersects the column that starts with I, and you follow it along and you find it's X. And you keep on, I don't want to do it for all of it, because it will take ages. And you keep on doing this. Now this is really powerful because you've got two I's here, right? But they're going to encrypt to two different things. This one's going to encrypt to X. This one is going to encrypt to U. So you've got the same letter, it's encrypting two different things. You can't use frequency analysis on them naively. And this is really, really powerful. Vintage analysis weren't used very often because for some reason people didn't know about them. I mean, this was developed by a guy who was basically working for the King of France at the time. And people aren't, in a hurry to publish their really powerful systems. So this was like super secret. And it didn't really come up until Babbage. Have you guys ever heard of Charles Babbage? Cool. Babbage was the guy who cracked it. Babbage and a guy called Krasitsky, they kind of did it independently, but they were going off to work. They cracked it, but it didn't really become a thing until it was cracked. The reason for this really is still a thing is because it's actually really powerful and really hard to crack. It is crackable. Basically what you do is, I'm not going to go into this in super detail because it's actually really, really involved. I have the slides for it and I decided I'm not doing it. Because it's actually quite involved and it'll take forever. But I'll give you a rough idea how to do it. Basically this repeats, right? If your message is, say, 300 letters, this is going to repeat a lot. So what you start doing is you start looking for cases where you've got collections of letters that keep on recurring. So say you've got KJZ, you've got another, say, 60 messages, KJZ, KJZ. Well, that means that, you've got, obviously this is looped, the keyword is looped. The same three letters are being encrypted again with the same keyword, the same letters of the keyword again, and then it loops another whatever time and encrypts it again. Now, if you've got enough of these, and you will if your message is long enough, that's when you can start working out how long the keyword is. Because it's basically going to be the greatest common divisor of the, you guys know what a greatest common divisor is, right? It's going to be the greatest common divisor of, I'm really happy I got like a numeric class. I got a numeric group of people, I'm really happy about this. You've got, it's going to be the greatest common divisor all the time it loops over. Because that tells you how many times in an interval, in each interval it loops, and that'll tell you how long it is. So from there you can start using frequency analysis on, say, in this case, every fifth letter. And that's really powerful. And from there you can work out what everything encrypts to, and you can crack this. This is still really powerful because this stuff was being used in like the 19th century and early 20th century before computers started proliferating. So you had to do this by hand, and that's really, really hard. Nonetheless, it was still pretty prevalent. And the big reason why it kept being prevalent is because people hit on a very clever idea. This method of breaking it works because the keyword loops. So what if you have a keyword that's exactly the same length as the message? That way you can't, use this property of the fact that, after 60 letters, KJZ is going to be encrypted the exact same way and repeat. You avoid that. So in theory, that was really powerful. That was broken later on in the early 20th century, and I can't really remember how they did it. Who did it? I don't know how they did it. I can't remember who did it. I couldn't find it anywhere, but it was definitely broken. Basically, what they did was you've got your message the same length as the keyword. You've got your message the same length as the keyword. Whatever, blah, 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 blah. You don't know what this is. You don't know what your key is, and you've got your message that you've accepted. So what can you do? Well, there's probably going to be a Z. Say, like, there's going to be phrases that you know are going to come up in any message. You're guaranteed, right? You can't, you can do things without ease, but no one does it. So So you start putting like words that you know are going to be in there, like say D. And you work, okay, if you've got a keyword that's the same length as your message, that's nigh impossible to remember. So it's going to be like a part of a book, or, you know, a set of countries that's standardized and that people memorize, or something like that, which means it's going to be actual words. Your keyword is going to be a bunch of actual words, and you can exploit this. Because if you've got something that sounds like, that if D gives you a sensible, you know, keyword, say GYP, sorry, YPT. Well, what words have YPT? What English, this is going to be an English word, what words have YPT in them?
Egypt.
Bingo. Yeah, sure. Well, in this case, it's Egypt, because I'm cribbing this out as well. So, you know, you work out, okay, if this is Egypt, to get this ciphertext, what do these have to be? At. Oh, at B. Cool. And then you can start working backwards from there. You've narrowed down your possibilities for keywords by a massive amount. And then you keep on attacking that. So by just having a ciphertext that you don't know anything about, you can still crack it using these methods. So why can you do this? Okay, go back. That was something I thought about explaining how to like actually crack the one-time pad with a looping thing, and then I decided against these two. So just by you know nothing about the ciphertext, and yet you can still crack it. Why does this work? Because once again, you're looking for familiar corners. You're looking for bits of the message that you can grab hold of and kind of work out the shape. So in this case, you're working out the shape of the key rather than the message. But even that's exploitable. So what do? Well, you can't avoid, you know, having any shape in the message because you actually need to tell people something, right? But the key, this attack is predicated on the idea that your key is actual words. And what if your key is not actual words? What if it is just a string of random letters that are the exact same length as your message? And that is really powerful, and that was devised in the 20s by the US Army. It's called the one-time pad. Basically, it's called the one-time pad because you've got, basically, because if you can't remember random string of messages. So agents, operatives, and military officers, this was mostly used by the actual army. So you had like officers with these one-time pads. It was like literally a pad of paper, and you wrote the message. Sorry, you had your keyword printed in front of you. You encrypted stuff with that keyword, then you ripped out the piece of paper and threw it out. And next time you want to encrypt something, use the next page in this pad. This is provably 100% secure, provided you do it right. But if you do it right, it is 100% secure. It is unbreakable. Because for a 21-letter encryption, there are 5 times 10 to the 30 possible keys, and thus that many messages. This is for a 21-letter message. Like, this is nothing. Like, you get messages sent, like, over a day. They're, like, in the hundreds. So you've got 5 times 10 to the 30 possible keys, and that many messages. The brilliance of it is that even if you somehow manage to brute force this, and, like, this was used at the same time as computers, so it could possibly have been, it couldn't, but, you know, maybe. It could possibly have been brute forced. You're going to get, with that many possible messages, you're going to get a whole bunch that look sensible. So you don't know what the actual message is, so you get every wrong message as well. You're going to get, like, attack the hill at dawn. Can you start? I think I might have put it on. Yeah, basically, that message decrypts to attack the valley at dawn and defend the hill at sunset with 2 different keys. And that's really, really, really powerful. Where this breaks down is there's a couple of places where this breaks down. One is if you don't do it right. Your random key isn't actually random. That's pretty exploitable. that's one of the biggest employers of the Soviets, and being the Soviets, they didn't do it right. They used this a lot during World War II, and they basically came up with their random keys by having someone sit down at a typewriter and press random keys, and it didn't end up being random at all. So, like, that was kind of breakable. The other place where this falls down is when you use the same key twice. So I've got two different messages. Because of the probability of a single message being the correct message, if I get two different messages, which with the same key, give me garbled nonsense and something sensible, rad, I know that this probably is not the key, and I know that they've reused it. If I know that my opponent has reused these keys, and I get garbled nonsense with one and sensible key with the other, this probably isn't the right key. However, if I get two sensible looking messages, the likelihood, two sensible looking messages with the same key, the likelihood that this is the right message is really, really, really high, because the odds of this happening are so low that pretty much you can safely say that the only way this would happen is if this is the correct key. So what the Soviets did, by this point this is the Cold War, what they did was that they used the same key for sending messages to Canberra as they did to Moscow, which means you're encrypting two messages with the same key. The Americans got hold of this and broke their encryption pretty easily. The third biggest problem, and this is a huge one, is how you get your key. Because you've actually got to give your physical pad to somebody. Or the Soviets had like a radio station that was broadcasting somewhat periodically. But this is acceptable, right? The Germans during World War II had this massive problem where their code books for Enigma. Enigma was sort of like this. It was a lot more complicated and really strange. It wasn't even a one-time pad. It was a whole different.
Bloody clever.
Yeah, it was working, but clever.
Because the Germans did it wrong, but yeah.
Yeah, there's also a human error. The Germans sent the same message every time. One of the big flaws in Enigma was that to use it, you had to have a code book with a code for every single day that you set your Enigma machine to. And British kept on intercepting them. Because you've actually got to physically get them to point to point. And this leads to what I like to call the Python problem. Pretty much, it's the problem where if you have the key or the password, there's really no encryption method that can possibly, save you. Because your password is the key weakness, and you've got to make sure that your password is secure. Otherwise, I can, hit you with a $5 wrench until you tell me, and then your entire password is going down the shit. So yeah, SKCD, as always, are the comics for literally every situation. So this lends us toward what we get, which is what we use in modern encryption methods, where your fundamental problem is not your method of encryption. It is getting your key to the person you want to exchange messages with. So this leads us to these two guys called Diffie and Hellman in the 70s, I believe, came up with a very clever method of trying to share a secret key over a line with an eavesdropper. The math in this is actually pretty involved. I can explain it later, but it will take time. So if you're interested, ask me a question afterwards. So one cool thing about cryptography is that pretty much everything can be summed up with metaphors. So in this case, we use paint. Paint, basically, paint because it's really easy to mix paint, but it's very hard to unmix it. So you work out what colors you got, what colors to end and start. So we've got Alice and we've got Bob. Alice and Bob want to communicate with each other. So, what do? They want to communicate a common key to each other, basically, that they can encrypt things with. And decrypt things with. But so Eve for eavesdropper, and you would be amazed how long it took me to work that one out. Eve, and they don't want Eve to hear it, because Eve is bad. You don't want Eve to know what your common secret is. Eve's the eavesdropper. So you pick a common paint. Yellow. So, I guess I want to draw this. So you've got Alice, we've got Bob, and we've got Eve. And this is sort of going to be all the things that they know. We've got your common paint that everybody knows, right? It's yellow. So they've got Y, and Eve knows it. It's public. Alice and Bob broadcast this to everybody. And they've got their secret colors, which in Alice's case is red, Bob's case is blue. They don't know each other's secret colors. Eve doesn't know anything. So what do? They mix, Alice and Bob mix their common paint with their secret colors to get Y plus R, Y plus B, and they exchange that. So now everybody knows Y plus B, Y plus R, and Eve has it. Y plus B, Y plus R. Now that's bad, right? Eve's got your colors. But Alice and Bob both add their secret color to it, so you get Y plus B plus R. And Alice can do this because she has R. Bob goes Y plus R plus B. Bob can do that because he has B. Eve can't do this.
You get double Y.
Yeah, well, the double Y, and it's a metaphor that I'm massively simplifying. But basically, Eve can't do this because she has two Y's, and she can't work out the common secret color. And she can't unmix it, that's the point. You can't get B and R from this. It's impossible. So what you're looking for, so this is basically the model that they propose for exchange. What you're looking for is the mathematical equivalent of this paint mixing, which is a function that's really easy to do one way, but impossible to do the other one. It's called a one-way function, lo and behold. In this case, for Diffie-Hellman key exchange, the one-way function is called the discrete logarithm problem. Basically, you'll know what logarithm is, right?
Yep.
Basically, there's no way to get log A of B. There's no way of getting this short of like brute forcing it. Checking, well, does A to the power 1 work? No. Does A to the power 2 work? No. Does A to the power 3 work? Yes. There's no way of doing this short of brute forcing it. So if you make A and B big enough, it's impossible to do with a computer. Because like a computer will take until the heat death of the universe to solve the discrete logarithm problem. So this is really powerful, and we'd probably still be using this if people didn't come up with a better way to do it right off. Next slide. It's called RSA encryption. It was done by these three guys, Adi Shamir, Ron Rivest, and Leonard Edelman. They were mathematicians and computer scientists in the 70s, and basically they got together and they said, we want to come up with a really good way to actually send messages totally. How do we do this? Well, let's go back to the wonderful world of metaphors again. They devised a really cool system that we currently mostly use, sort of. I mean, it's the actual system that we use today is a lot more involved. Like way more involved. You couldn't catch it. Basically, you might have heard this in the form of a logic puzzle. You've got Alice and Bob want to exchange like objects with each other, but they can't trust the postal service, and they can't meet up. It's impossible for them to meet up. They can't leave the house, and they want to stop Eve from getting their hands on the parcel. What do? Well, Alice sends Bob a box which has no lock on it and is completely empty. She just sends a box. Bob goes, and Alice wants to send something to Bob. She wants to send an actual object to Bob. So she sends an empty box. Bob sticks his lock onto it. He buys a lock. He goes out, he buys a lock, and he sticks it onto the box, but he doesn't lock it. He makes a point not to lock it. Then he sends that to Alice, who buys her own lock, doesn't lock it, like that. You've got two unlocked locks. There's nothing in this box, so Eve has nothing to steal. She can't steal anything. Now, Alice puts her object in the box. We've got Alice's block, Bob's block. She puts her object in the box, and gets a message, he gets his parcel with his lock closed and the thing inside. So he takes his key, which only he has, because Alice doesn't have a key, right? They kept their locks. They kept their keys when they put the locks on it. Unlocks his, takes his thing out, puts his own thing in there, and locks Alice's key. And then he sends that back. Alice unlocks hers with her key, locks Bob's lock if she wants to put something in, and so on and so forth. So at no point, when an object has been inside the... Did everybody follow this? Cool. So you get the bit confusing. At no point, when Alice and Bob exchange locks, exchange gifts, whenever there's anything in a box, at no point is there an unlocked lock. But the key thing is that these locks are public, right? It's a public lock. Everybody knows what a lock looks like. I can see this lock. Eve is holding this lock, but she can't unlock it because she doesn't have a key. And that's this idea. It's called public key encryption, and it's the same principle as before. You got your public key, which anybody can use to encrypt stuff with, and you got your private key, which only you know to decrypt things with. Basically, let's say that Bob sends a lot of things to Alice, but Alice doesn't send anything back because Alice is actually a son. Okay, so Bob sends things to Alice. What he does is he goes up, he looks up Alice's unique lock in a phone book, makes his own copy of it, puts whatever he wants to send her in the box, locks Alice's lock, sends it to Alice. Alice opens the lock with her key, because only she knows what her key is. Nobody else can unlock it. They can download her lock, they can make her lock, but they can't make her key, which doesn't make a lot of sense in the metaphor, but you know what I mean. So if you have a lock, you can if you have a schematic for a lock, you can look up the key. Anyway, metaphorically it works. And this is the principle behind RSA encryption. I'll secure my communication. Okay, let's take that. Don't click anything else. Basically, the idea is that I look up I can go into this in more detail later if somebody wants. The masters want to get kind of involved, and it'll take time to talk about.
Is this Euler's theorem?
Yes, use Euler's theorem to work out bits of it that is predicated on Fermat's theorem.
Okay.
Which I can't remember. Off the top of my head. But I got the actual algorithm for generating these blocks and slides later, so if you're interested, just right off. Okay, so basically, when I want to send something to Alice, I look up her. Basically, Alice has these two random numbers, big random prime numbers, P and Q, and she multiplies them together to give N. Now, if P and Q are big enough, it is nigh impossible to find N. Like, really, really, really hard. Because the only way to factorize something, as far as we know, is more or less to brute force it. No one has come up with a fast enough algorithm for factoring really, really big numbers. And that's what this is predicated on, that nobody else can work out what P and Q are. So basically, I look up Alice's N and other things. It's not that simple, but for the sake of explanation, I look up Alice's N, I encrypt it with her N, and then Alice decrypts it with P minus 1 times Q minus 1. And only she can work out what this number is, because only she has P and only she has Q. As a result, only she can work out P minus 1 and Q minus 1, and only she can decrypt her lock. This is really powerful. This is huge. All internet communication is basically based on this. If I want to send something to my bank, I need to know that somebody who's sitting on the line can't take my bank details. And the reason I know this is because I know it's encrypted with P minus 1 and Q minus 1, and that's really, really powerful because it's encrypted using this RSA encryption named after Rivest, Shamir, and Abrams. I didn't say that. It's named after people who came up with it. That's really powerful. Basically, all internet communication is based on that. So I guess the question you're wondering is how secure is my communication? And the answer is pretty damn secure. N is the N that people use for banking communication is usually larger than 10 to the power of 308, which is Basically, 100 million computers will take over 1,000 years to factorize. That's spectacularly powerful, and for the time being, that's sufficient. Well, I'll get to this later. But it's sufficient so that you know that, your block, the bank thief isn't sitting on the other end of the line, scraping my data and reading it. I guess, has the in-out. So that's sufficient for that's sufficient for a journalist hacker. But what if, say, hypothetically, I was worried about a large government body that was possibly reading my data? So there's been a lot of, I guess not debate is the wrong word, but speculation over just how much the NSA can do. So has the NSA broken RSA encryption? No, probably. We don't think they have. It's very, very unlikely that they've actually broken it. I mean, how would you break something like this? Either you come up with, new algorithms for factorizing really large numbers, in which case you're a genius and please collect your $1 million, or more than that, because this is huge, or alternatively go into, fraud. Or you build a quantum computer in your basement. The NSA can theoretically do that. You guys know what a quantum computer is, right? Okay. Basically, it's a computer that uses quantum states to do stuff really, really fast.
So it can brute force incredibly quickly?
Yes, basically. We don't think anyone's managed to build one yet. It's actually really hard, really, really, really hard. And it's safe to say that the NSA hasn't done it because, previously, before the 21st century, all encryption was more or less a solely military and political thing. These days, there's actually a vested interest by private individuals, which means there's a lot of research gone into it. And you can't build a quantum computer overnight, right? Nobody has any idea how to do it right now.
I have a few actually. The large number of factorized using Shor's algorithm has been 21.
21.
So it's not great, but it has been done.
It's been done. But, quantum computers are still a pretty long way away. And if someone was about to build one, would probably not. Now.
And it would become apparent pretty quickly the moment they started using it.
Well, no, because here's the thing. Next question. So I guess just because you've broken RSA doesn't mean you can't read your email. So can the NSA read your email? Well, yes. Next thing. Basically, to get these random numbers, your computer doesn't really implement stuff like this. Whenever you ping Gmail, there's a server that implements this stuff and encrypts this stuff for you. And on top of that, you don't really write the software that does this stuff yourself, even if you are doing it. You pull up random number generators and encryption protocols and stuff like that, which do it for you. Now, in the 90s, the NSA had this program that they were really, really trying really, really hard to shove into all computers and make standardized, which would basically create a backdoor into your encryption method. And basically, they were locked out of the room. They couldn't do it, so they ended up trying to do it secretly. One of the things that Edward Snowden showed us was that the NSA had, for the last 10 years, had a program of trying to secretly sneak backdoors or weaken encryption standards. They backdoored or weakened, we don't really, for some reason it's really hard to find out. The standard RSA number generator was apparently pretty crappy, as it turns out. People kind of knew about it in 2007, but everybody used it anyway. Basically, we know that the RSA the company which writes the standard number generator is called RSA, because it was founded by 3 guys who invented RSA. They were paid $10 million by the NSA. They were paid $10 million. We know that. We also know that the thing has a backdoor in it, and it's also been deliberately weaker than it could be. And the general suspicion is that the NSA paid them $10 million to weaken it deliberately. Basically, SSL, HTTPS, and 4G are security protocols that, 4G, your phone uses, SSL, stuff uses, HTTPS, web servers use it. Basically, they're security protocols that you use to encrypt it, because actual, RSA will have long and complicated and They're definitely backdoored by the NSA. There was a memo that was bragged about it. The memo was sent that Edward Snowden released, which is basically bragging about it, going, "Hey, we've cracked all these things. Don't tell anyone that we've done it." So that's definitely backdoored. And it's possible. Some people have reported that they might be able to break really weak RSA, like 1024-bit. After that was found out, basically everybody started panicking and trying to move to 2048-bit. But they might have been able to break really weaker RSA standards. So I guess what we do know is the NSA can probably read your email. What does this mean for the casual, purveyor of domestic terrorism? You might be forced to having to go outside and meet your fellow conspirators. I know that's sad, but if you're trying to commit domestic terrorism over the internet, perhaps probably going outside might be for the best. There's basically these are standard commercial protocols. You can get software that isn't commercial and is more or less invented for the sole purpose of beating the NSA. It's called PGP. One of it is called PGP. PGP is something you can get on your own computer that does your own RSA stuff for you, basically. It was basically invented in the 90s for the sole purpose of going, hang on a minute, the NSA can read my data, I don't want this. And, furious crypto nerds panicking and creating their own standards. PGP kind of pretty good privacy. You're probably, they can't come up with that. PGP basically exists because people were angry that the NSA might be able to read their data, so you can be safe that won't have a backdoor, and there's other stuff. So yeah. Any questions?
So you've been talking about the NSA a fair bit, and that's generally a bit of a USA-centric problem. What are things like on the domestic front?
Domestic front in Australia? We don't know.
Because
guess what?
DSD, ASIO, basis.
The equivalent. We've got DSD does quite a few things. We don't know
That's
if they...
Defense Signals Directorate.
Yeah, Defense, okay. There's three major organizations in Australia which deal with cryptographic intelligence. ASIO, which handles foreign affairs, sort of-ish, external affairs. ASIS, which handles internal security, that's our equivalent of the NSA. And DSD, which is Defense Signals Directorate. It's ASD now.
ASD.
Yeah, Australian Signals, they changed the name. Australian Signals Directorate. Of those, the one that would be most likely to be spying on its citizens is the ASD. Not the ASD, the ASIS. ASD doesn't really do a lot of this stuff. ASD does, cybersecurity more than it does cryptography. They do a lot of cryptography stuff as well. With regards to whether they, ASIS is reading our email, the reason why the NSA was able to sneak all these backdoors and weaken all these encryption standards is because a lot of these cryptographic companies operate out of the United States. Pretty much all of them do, I think. So you're actually PGP is done in Europe, which is why it's safe from the NSA. Pretty much that's the only reason the NSA was able to do these things is because they were able to put the full force of American law onto these companies and say, we are the NSA, give us your shit. So I guess it's possible that ASIS is reading our emails. I don't want to be all conspiracy theorist here, but ASIS is reading our emails. I mean, if you're emailing about, coffee or whatever, you're probably safe. like I said, if you're a serious purveyor of domestic terrorism, you might want to,
Meet up for coffee.
Exactly. That'd be a really good movie. I was thinking about this already. I can't believe the best movie. Tell it later. Tell it when I get.
Cryptonauts, the movie.
I was thinking about domestic terrorism movie, but
Is that called Three Lions?
I was thinking guy and girl meet up through their shared interest in domestic terrorism, and because the they can't do this on their own because they don't have the power to force these standards on people the way the NSA does. Because nobody operates out of Australia.
And the Patriot Act is unique to America.
Like the NSA physically went to a whole bunch of companies and said, give us your keys. You can't do that in Australia. So it's possible if they took the methods, because, here's the real problem with weakening encryption standards. And this is why it's actually super irresponsible to do, and why everybody laughed the Americans out in the 90s when they tried, is because if the NSA weakens their encryption standards, they can break your RSA, but so can any smart criminal. And this is why, people are actually really, really angry about the NSA doing this. Among, government spying on it. Among other things. But basically, if the NSA can do it, then they may have told ASIS, and ASIS might be doing it. We don't really know. We have absolutely zero information as to what the Russians and the Chinese are doing. What they've broken is a whole nother mystery.
That said, Huawei now makes a whole lot of hardware which could have God knows what just built into it.
Yes, that's also possible. Your hardware might have a Chinese Trojan sitting in it.
So at the moment, it's more likely to have a Singaporean Trojan sitting in it since Optus is run by Singtel.
Yeah, but the Singaporeans are, planning to invade the West Coast.
This is true.
I don't think anyone's got that plan. I mean, Perth, really?
We don't like LA, but that wasn't true. The odds of Singaporeans reading your emails, you'd have to worry about that for the Americans. Well, you worry about Singapore reading your emails, same way you worry about the Americans reading your emails. That's an Australian Russian. I'm worried about this because of my privacy. I'm not worried about this because of my security, and I'm not really worried that the Singaporeans are reading sensitive government data that they are preparing for their inevitable invasion of the West Coast. It's going to be said of that, because the other people who do it are crazy rednecks. What do they worry about the West Coast? They hate the West Coast. It's possible the United States is reading your crap. It's possible that ASIS is reading your crap. It's a definite possibility.
But
are there issues with data analysis though? Because if there are that many emails, at some point it must just become hard to go, right, I don't have the people to actually read this shit.
Yeah, well, that's a very good point. But what we've kind of seen is that kind of targeted about it. They kind of, you can't, there's only so many emails that you can read, but there is such a thing as search engines. And if they find, bomb, nitrate, stuff like that, you can, I can Google search for nitrate, right? That goes to a database. I can do that with a database of emails. We don't really know how the NSA does things, or at least I don't know. Maybe it's been published and I haven't read it, but as far as I'm aware, we really have no idea as to just what the NSA knows about Australia.
so you only really need to worry if you're actually, doing something that you shouldn't.
Okay. There's this usual. Okay, think about with all, and this is where this segs into cryptography is one of those things that segs into all those subjects. The first people do all the things I was talking about when linguists know what words look like. This segs into this realm of philosophy and politics. There's this old adage that people trot out whenever they institute surveillance stuff like that. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. Yeah, sure. I have nothing to fear because I don't engage in terrorism and I don't engage in crime because I'm a computer scientist and all I do is email with people about cupcakes instead of cryptography. You see the comic. This is XKCD had this comic of how I should feel about the NSA spying on me, and that was one of the patterns. My data is safe behind 6 layers of symmetric or public key encryption. What is it? Just me emailing people about cryptography. But we don't really know how much we have to fear. If you're really worried about the NSA reading your crap about, gay rights, you're probably safe. But we don't know. It's safe to say, a SWAT team in right here isn't going to burst down your door because of your emails.
Also, it's not their jurisdiction.
Also, NSA, if you're listening to this, I have nothing to hide. I'm okay. Don't look at my email.
That thing about, third kidney in
Oh.
Giants, mate. Check out our big knives.
I'm gonna show you guys something. It's from the same panel. Okay, you know what? I don't give a damn. Basically, it's like from the same panel. It's the exhibitionist. Hello, NSA. How good are these strawberries? Are you watching? Oh man, this lotion feels so good on my skin. So like, it was amazing. It's a panel from an
So what, you just load a whole series of dodgy images with keywords?
It's not even that. It's just the guy really wants the NSA to know about how good this strawberry tastes, how good this lotion feels on his. Yeah,
I believe I've seen that one.
You may
Give me.
Google Cryptography. It's pretty great. Like, I guess what I'm getting at is the modern cybersecurity agencies and modern surveillance agencies have a lot more power than we tend to ascribe. Yeah, this one. You know, it's the exhibitionist. That was my train of thought.
Santa is imaginary. This burrito is real.
Like, I guess what I'm getting at, and what this whole Snowden thing showed us, I mean, whatever your opinions on Snowden and what he did are, it showed us some very important things, and it showed us that the surveillance agencies have a lot more power than we ascribe them to, and even though these laws are on the books, like Patriot Act was passed in what,
2001.
2001 Patriot Act was passed. So if we've had like 12 years where we've known that they could theoretically do it, and suddenly we're surprised that they're actually doing it. It turns out they have a lot more power and a lot more ability than we previously thought was feasible, and they are willing to bend the rules quite a bit for the sake of security, because it's not really acceptable to like weaken encryption standards, specifically so the NSA can crack it. Like that. Backdooring it is one thing, actively weakening it is another, because that means everybody can do it.
So backdoors just something only one person can get through?
Theoretically, basically, you send a key which says this is the NSA, and it like does things.
It's basically your own private key, so if you've got a key to the back door of your house that no one else has.
Yeah. So you know the NSA can kind of sneak into servers, steal keys, and read. I'm not really sure how it works because I'm not really a server guy. But basically, it means that they can get your keys, they can read stuff being sent because they ping it with a key that says, "Hey guys, I'm the NSA. Please give me your stuff." And they say, "Yes, sir." Through back full stuff.
Well, there's okay, shitty algorithms with standards.
Yeah, that's what they did with the.
What's the elliptic curve one? That was.
Yeah, that's elliptic curve. And what they did was they deliberately weakened. I was talking about this random number generator. I can't remember what it was called. And that worked on kind of elliptic curve thing. That was deliberately weakened by the NSA, specifically so they can crack it. That was kind of super dodgy. And I mean, the NSA has a lot of power. They got a lot of money. They spent $250 million a year on like